Basically, my experiment is with instruments and people. And the same music I write for the contemporary classical performers, any one of my ensembles or myself can play it. Okay, so I don't change up the kind of language that I'm using for this group or that group. I have music for gamelan. I have music for koto ensembles. I have music for gaga ku. I have all kinds of music. I don't change up the language. I think that the experiment of using this specific language that I have and experiment with instruments and people, sometimes extracted from their history, sometimes using their history as well, tells me something about myself. And what it tells me is this, is that most things that artists do will find its course. They won't run out or derail, no matter what kind of engagement it may be, what kind of ensemble, what kind of condition. It won't derail, okay? Because art is here for a specific reason. It wants to engage us to think deeper about ourselves and our connection to our environment. The creative musician coming out of that tradition, they all have to have a signature. And the sound is the biggest thing that they have because everything you play, your sound goes through it, okay? Um, uh, like, for example, most of like a Luster Bowie, I'll speak about him, or Ted Daniels, or Don Cherry, or Miles Davis. Let's use just those Miles. Every one of them, I guarantee you, had at least 4 or 5 C's and 4 or 5 D's and 4 or 5 E's, and meaning that they could shade each of those attacks so that the sound they played was still a C or a D, but different. You see, that's because at some point you have to make the sound be different than it was before. Now, I recognize in, let's say, contemporary classical music that they have a different sound too. And the soloists, only the soloists are allowed to have their own individual sound, not the ones sitting in the orchestra. You see, they may have a personality sound, but not an individual. They can't be too individualized because the conductor is going to say, "Well, that chord is out of tune," or that note, can you shape that note up or something? But the soloists can. They can have an individual sound. They can make they can make their individual F sharp a little bit different, because who's going to stop them? Nobody. Ankhrasmation is a musical language as opposed to a musical notation system. In my Ankhrasmation, there are lots of commands. There's a rule of thumb for success or failure for any portion of it. There's elements that have to be referenced, like when there's color involved, the colors have to be referenced on various levels. It has what I call velocity units that deals with all kinds of motion. And of the velocity units, there are like 8 of them. There's a set of 4 that's on the left sphere and a set of 4 on the right sphere. The left sphere is generally slow and the right sphere is generally fast, okay, of velocity. And each velocity unit of the 4 on each side, they all have the same relationship to each other. And then there's the rhythm units. The rhythm units, there are 6 sets. Actually, there's 7, but I don't use the number 7 yet because I just started working on it the last couple of years, and I have to figure out a little bit more components of how I think about using it. But it's there. There's 6 sets, and each set starts with um, a long and a short. That's one set, and each set progressively is long short, but it gets shorter as it moves from set number 1 to set number 6. So that means that there are 12 of them there, but each set long short relationship are interchangeable with each other set that progresses shorter. And the long short relationship or the slow fast relationship is constantly parallel throughout this language. I don't mind the score evaporating for each of the music objects that it creates because it's going to create a new music object that's completely different. And it would do it over and over and over and over and over. The only requirement is that the artists that are performing it maintain a high level of sincerity. That's all it requires. And an artist shows you stuff that you may not supposedly like, but once you hear it, it doesn't matter whether you like it because memory is one of the, it's second to the heartbeat. Memory is second to the heartbeat. If you heard it, your inner consciousness has stored it, and it's going to influence you whether you allow it to happen normally or were you allow it to happen through intrusion. But it's going to influence you. It's fascinating. Yeah, it's fascinating. To be an artist in these times, and I imagine any other times as well, is the most exciting thing that I could ever think about doing, ever.